Okay, this election is going to move that issue forward. And what it's going to do, it's going to inject leadership in one direction or the other to solve the problem. And my feeling, as I've said frequently, is that there isn't a whole lot of space between the different factions. I wouldn't even call them factions on this. So I think there'll be leadership saying we need to listen to each other, we need to compromise, we need to do some level of development, which people all agree on, and we'll move forward.
Now, and possibly contrary to popular belief, the current council is moving forward on the Pan and Fork question. Just last meeting, we passed a resolution giving direction to the CDC suggesting approximately 55,000 square feet of development. I was hoping to include a 34-foot height limit similar to what RMI has, but that didn't make it into this resolution. But there's plenty of time to add that later. Is this moving forward as quickly as most people want? Probably not. But something I've learned in the last 4 years is that government work never does. But I believe it's more important to get it done right than to get it done fast. The next step is to identify the acceptable uses for the property, whether it's retail, food and beverage, offices, or residential. Condos along the river are not my first choice for the land, but I do understand they may be needed by a developer to make the finances work.
The problem with taking the Pan and Fork Trailer Park and making it into the Basalt River Park is that people aren't looking at the consequence. What's it supposed to be? They're just dealing with it as a separate thing. When we first started this 4 years ago, Bill Kane in the planning office did a great job with a slideshow of all the towns that had done something with their riverfront. And it was all cafes and activities. When you take the question of the river park out of what it is supposed to do for the town, it's supposed to bring activity to the town. It's supposed to move us towards that goal. And so everything having to do with it, you have to compare with the goal. Now, when you start bickering about numbers, you know, it can't be more than half an acre. Well, what if there's this beautiful plan that takes 0.6 acres? Well, I guess we've just gone all to hell in a handbasket. You know, we've just ruined Basalt. It's not the case. You have to look at what you need to make it what you want for the rest of the town. It has to be an active park and not just a nice grassy field to throw frisbees to your dog or something. You know, this is going to be another summer with just a grassy field. It should already be on its way to being not just an amenity, although that's important, an important part of all the things you want to do for your town, an amenity for the residents, but an attraction, the gem of the valley. People have things to do there, they want to come there. You know, from the start, everybody's getting tired of me saying, but I say it every meeting, it's not either or. It's not a nice park or development. It has to be both, and it's always planned to be both. That's why we bought the 2.5 acres and left it in the floodplain so that it could only be a park. And we raised the other part out so that part of it could be a development. If you stop just listening to my own image for what I want the park to be, la 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 la, and listen to your neighbors, what they want, move towards a consensus, stop bickering about numbers.
First, I want to address a lot of the comments that are going around right now in town about the pace of the decision making related to the Pan and Fork. And some feel that the decision should have been made months ago or perhaps even years ago. I happen to disagree. I believe that this parcel is so exceptional, so special, and so critical to our future and our identity that we should take as long as we need to get this parcel right. In the past 12 months, we've gone from 150,000 square feet of commercial space to what's currently being contemplated of 55,000 square feet. I believe this is progress. We've included the community in the process, and that obviously will result and a longer timeline to answer these big questions. And people have come out and stated that they are not comfortable with representative democracy and communication that's only with a potential developer. People want to be heard directly about this incredibly important decision. So to answer your question about steps to move forward, I would say that we need to continue listening to the voices of the community, the path that we have been on over the past several months. And I'd like to point out that this path has been forced by the community and not necessarily embraced by many of the current council. But we need to maintain the conversation and open dialogue. I also believe that we need to understand the numbers, the sunk costs, the appraised value, and the intrinsic value of this amazing property. We need to consider the potential of the sustainable economic vitality that this property could create for the downtown. There are so many numbers flying around, and in many ways this is a tactic to create fear for us to move into only a development-only mindset. We need to understand what we can truly construct on this parcel as well. There's a lot of conversation about underground parking, and I've had conversations with town staff, and from what I've learned from them, this is actually cost prohibitive and not a true option on the parcel.
Well, first of all, we need to quit backtracking. Council has adopted a pre-development agreement with the developer. They also have approved a square footage limit. I think it's necessary to move on to the next step, let the developer submit a plan, review the plan, let it go through the planning process and come to the council and make a decision one way or another. And if in fact the citizens don't care for the outcome of that, then it may have to go to a vote. I think we need to concentrate on recovering our investment. With the town's invested $7.5 million to date, and we need to move forward so that we can recover some of our expenses so we can move on to other more important, or most important projects.
The Pan Fork property has the potential to be a magnificent jewel in the middle of downtown and the heart of the valley. I picture a vibrant, interesting, and fun park with attractions for people of all ages, from water features to public art, embracing the river, the surrounding views, and the environment. Appropriately sized and scaled development next to RMI must activate the park, hopefully provide good jobs, and complement, not cannibalize, commerce in the downtown core. My top priorities for downtown are: 1, vitality, making downtown fun and lively and something to be proud of. 2, sustainability, both economically and environmentally, utilizing the gift of RMI to spur resource efficiency and attract other environmental businesses to town. Preserving small town charm by maintaining close oversight on future development. And 4, active river stewardship. We must showcase our 2 rivers, protect them for future generations, and educate the community on how to care for them.
We need to have confidence in our land use code. Nothing, I mean, I love that everybody's so emotionally involved, but this fear that something might get approved that isn't specifically what I want is not, 1, listening to your neighbors, and 2, has no confidence in our land use code. And we have a great land use code. We have so many hoops. Nothing is going to get approved that the public won't have a chance to comment on, and they won't have to go through planning and zoning and us to be just what we want. We have a model now that Post made, and this beautiful drawing that Post made, that you look at it and you can see exactly what is on the table now. You can stop worrying that it's going to be downtown Manhattan. This is what the plan is now, and it's easy to see that it's mostly all park. And if it is developed so that it's an active attraction, then it relates to the rest of the town, and what happens at Lions Park and what happens at the old a recycle center. You know, we need to get that moving now. You know, people keep saying, well, maybe this part of a good plan, you know, we could do over on the Basalt Center Circle parcel. Who knows when that's going to happen? It could be 10 years. 10 years is not moving us towards our goal. All these things we've been talking about, affordable housing, early child care, vitality for downtown, they all have to be that goal. They all have to be measured up to that goal. And this has to be a part of that. It can't just be, I needed to be X number of square feet. What's that got to do with anything?
My vision for the Pan and Fork would be an active, vibrant river park where we see families, kayakers, the arts, concerts, and recreation. I would like to see limited development closer to the RMI parcel, preferably without high-end residential, because I feel that high-end residential may hinder the accessibility and vitality of our park. I think an appropriate place for housing, both high-end and affordable, along with hotels, more restaurants, and more unique retail, would be on the Clark's parcel as it is redeveloped. I also believe that we should have affordable housing on the former recycling center lot. These conversations have already started, as we all know, and there is a lot of buy-in by our community into this vision of redevelopment on the Clark's parcel and the other two parcels that I mentioned. I think we also need to be really clear that this redevelopment process will not be easy and it will not be quick. We know that Clark's has a lot of players involved in that redevelopment. I'm patient and I want this done right. I want it done well. It's absolutely critical to our downtown. And as I mentioned, I think that the community is really on board with the downtown vision of infill and providing housing for all spectrums of the economic realm.
Well, my vision is summed up in the our town planning documents. Number of hours were spent. It even started back when I was still mayor, and that's 4 years ago. Having neighborhood meetings, there's been community input. It's been discussed and rediscussed, and the important thing is it needs to have connectivity to the rest of the of town. It has to have pedestrian connections. It has to have view corridors to the river, gathering places, and those are important things that the town really needs to consider. The other priorities is, number one is the pedestrian underpass. That is something that really needs to be done for the safety of our children, people riding the bus, and just it needs to be put in place so that there's a positive link between the schools, south side, and the rest of the town. The budget is one of my priorities, and I'd like to read from the cover letter to the budget proposed, the 2015 budget. This was written by Mike Scanlon, the town manager. It says, our 5-year fiscal forecast done in the fall of 2015 shows large negative impact we are having to prepare for if the developable portion of the Pan and Fork aren't developed and the town is not repaid. This would not be as problematic if we were also having to find funding for the Basalt Avenue bypass or underpass. Our original contribution to the Basalt Avenue underpass was thought to be in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 2 million. Is now fast approaching 4 million contribution required by the town. This is something that really needs to be taken care of. The spending needs to be balanced with the income, and we need to have a healthy reserve. The third priority would be community housing. We are lacking entry-level housing. The young people in our town, or the young people don't have the opportunities to come back to this town. We educate them and send them off to school, and then they're not able to come back to our community, so they make good members of somebody else's community. We need to really have a look at how we can provide housing for all ages so that we have a good mix in our community.
Okay, so let me start by saying I think it's critical that we have a big vision for the town. Western communities have historically developed in a kind of libertarian way. Put a gas station here, put a Walmart there, do whatever you want. It's a free country. And lack of zoning and lack of a comprehensive town plan has led to these scattershot communities. I think we have a bit of that in Basalt, and we're ready to move beyond it. So I think the Pan and Fork needs to be thought of in the context of Clark's, in the context of an underpass to Willits. These are the important things in the community. The Pan and Fork should have a big, sizable park that interacts with the development that's there. And generally speaking, the community seems to support development that will encourage use of the park. So for example, a cafe, restaurant. It sounds like an office building where there'll be lots of people coming and going. So those types of uses. The Clark's parcel ought to be thought of as the town core. It is the town core where a lot of density can go. That's where you can put housing. That's where you can fund affordable housing with free market housing. And that's where other mixed commercial uses could be built around a town core. So this vision of walkability, of mass transit orientation, of density in the core, that's what my big hope and vision for Basalt is in the future.
The economy is an important part. If we don't have viable businesses, our only revenues are sales tax or property tax, or if we can get some mitigation things from developers. The kind of things we choose to encourage, like the RMI project, like the River Conservative thing, we chipped in and really helped them create those things. They bring the vitality. That is what allows businesses that are struggling, particularly downtown. We can't ignore Willits. It's where all our sales tax comes from now. If we have an and also we had a room full of people from Willits who were pleading with us that after 15 years of living in a construction zone, they loved the urban density, they loved living there. Could you please get this finished? And Willits has plans for more economic vitality. Those sales taxes help us to participate in bringing vitality, doing the kind of park we want, attracting the kind of businesses we want, both to the downtown area and also to Willits. And so if we go ahead with this arts campus, it takes money, you have to have revenues, but that would be a great thing to do. In the conversion of Lions Park, which of course if we do this angle, Lions Park has to be redone. The city hall has to go. It's expensive, but then what's it called now? Art Space, right? It isn't, yeah. That wants to expand. It wants to have more attractions. It wants to have more arts. All of these things, we have the ability with the land use code to give carrots to those projects that will bring revenue and more of a year-round economy, and to discourage those. We got plenty of sticks and hoops, to discourage those that won't. An important thing is going to be more people living in Basalt and downtown.
Of all the questions that you asked for this interview, this is the question that I woke up thinking about this morning. Because as we're seeing nearly every day in the Aspen Public Radio and our newspaper is the pressure that we're seeing on our natural resources, our rivers, our parks, and our wilderness areas. So we know that creating a more year-round, sustainable economy is the big push in mountain and resort communities. And it seems that the answer has been more events, more events. Let's get more events into our towns. Let's get more people here. And that's pushed into both our traditional tourist times and into our non-traditional off-season tourist times. And I think that this is great. And I think that we have an opportunity to expand events on our river park. But I think we need to be really careful about how we expand it, and that we're really cautious and conscious of the impact on our resources, our natural resources, and on the residents. Because what Aspen is experiencing right now is massive pushback in both the county and the city by the residents saying it's too much, it's too often, it's too intrusive, the traffic is unbearable, I can't deal with the constant road closures for bike races that are happening every single weekend. We're also saying, as I started out, that we're seeing such huge pressure on our natural resources that need to be protected, because I believe that most of us moved here because of the beauty and the calm of our natural resources that are here in this valley. And so we need to contemplate that protection along with the economic growth of our valley.
Fortunately for the town of Basalt, we have two very fine grocery outlets, and they enable, or they provide for people coming into our town for shopping for groceries, which will flow into other businesses. RMI is going to be a key component of having a more consistent year-round economy. I feel that they're going to be attracting people from different parts of the country, even around the world. I think we need to make accommodations so that the people that are coming to visit and participate in our RMI's programs have nice places to live, to stay, and also to have a reason to maybe come back. I think the Roaring Fork Conservancy is also going to be a draw of people. They're planning a river center, which would attract also visitors from the other parts of the state and also other parts of the country. And this will also help get businesses through the shoulder seasons. You know, off season, and whatever we can do to bring more people in during those periods of time, it's going to be a benefit to the businesses.
Okay, that's a tough question, but what you need to do, I believe, to improve the year-round economy in Basalt is make it a town that can support different kinds of businesses and that is attractive to people who want to have offices there. So you need foot traffic, which means you need more housing and more parking that's done in a reasonable way. You need people to be able to come in and easily access town. This doesn't mean parking structures. It means addressing parking in small chunks throughout the community. So we need to enable businesses to thrive in the community with foot traffic, with parking, and as that is built, we'll have better, more sustainable businesses.
Basalt does not want to be just a resort community. We've seen how that can ravage the soul of a town just up the road. In order to have a sustainable year-round economy, we must provide more good jobs for our citizens. We've made great progress in this realm recently with RMI, SkiCo, Pitkin County, and maybe Backbone Media. We'll encourage businesses to come to Basalt by organic growth fostered by RMI and by attracting businesses from Ep Valley who are drawn by our more affordable rents, housing, proximity to Aspen, and world-class livability. We'll continue to enhance the economy with tourist dollars both in the summer and winter by providing more tourist beds like Elements Hotel in Willits and maybe the future hotel downtown. Visitors will also be drawn here by our phenomenal river park, natural resources, and fantastically friendly people. Finally, a crucial component of our future is to provide educational excellence for our children. People don't move to a community because it has a great police force or a great public works department. They move to a community because of employment opportunities, recreational opportunities, and first-class schools. I served on the school district's facilities master planning committee, and when our community resoundingly passed Amendment 3B to fund new campuses, we made a commitment to our future to have great schools for our kids. I have 2 daughters in Basalt schools. They're excited, challenged, and happy to go to school every morning. Our schools are very good and improving and can become the magnet we need to invigorate this community.
So I know that this question has become kind of the hot issue right now. As you mentioned, Scott Condon also has asked in one of our written candidate questions that we respond to it. And so I pondered it personally, and I must say that whenever I go to downtown Basalt, I currently don't have a problem with parking. Whether it's day, night, weekday, or weekend, I'm always able to find parking. But I venture a little further beyond parking straight in front of Bernard's. I go over to Community, for example, Community Bank, and you can always find parking there, and you have to walk a little bit. And I've talked with other people that live or work downtown and that live in the area, and they didn't feel that it's currently an overly onerous parking problem. So a solution to a problem that is being expressed by some is that we work on our walkable and bikeable connections and the signage to help people get around Basalt, East and West Basalt. And the other really critical thing is our Southside Underpass. Once we get our Southside Underpass, parents will allow their children to ride a bike, and parents will walk with their children to restaurants and to the park and to other places, and will reduce the traffic impact on downtown Basalt and increase, obviously, the safety for our children and other residents that live on the south side and our high school students. And I believe that this question is targeted only to downtown, but because I live in the Willits neighborhood, I'd like to bring up parking and traffic in Willits. And I think a lot of people have brought up that they feel unsafe biking, walking, and even driving in the Willits commercial area. And I think that that needs to be addressed somehow. I certainly feel that pressure. And also walking around and talking with Basalt residents, many people have said that over the past few years, the traffic on East Valley Road and the speed of the vehicles has become a safety issue. And unfortunately, I feel that that is only going to get worse as Willits continues to build out. So we need to talk about how can we make East Valley Road safe or safer for our residents and those that are visiting our park, the children, the animals, and the adults. And several years ago, there were a lot of residents in Willits that came to the town of Basalt and were really concerned about speeding cars. And so the town of Basalt had their police basically stay in the area and ticket and talk to these people who are speeding. And what they found was that the majority of those who were speeding were actual residents of Willits. So both the town of Basalt and the former chief, Keith, encouraged residents to go talk to their neighbors and let them know that the speeding is a concern and that they need to slow down for their animals and the children.
Well, in my opinion, a parking problem is probably a good thing. That means that we have a lot of people coming to our town. I think that at some point, as redevelopment happens, that parking is going to have to be an integral part of all the development, and it's going to have to be partnerships to fund those. The people need to have a place to park, and if it's not convenient, then they won't come back and visit. I think one solution might be a collector bus system that will enable employees to ride a bus to town rather than to drive their vehicles. And also, the people that work in the businesses have to be mindful to park in away spots instead of parking in front of their businesses. The only way that parking structures or any other type of large parking spaces they're going to have to be financed through partnerships.
Okay, so if you go downtown in Basalt during the day, you'll see a lot of cars from businesses in town, employees of businesses are parked there. So the question is, how do you have enough parking that people from outside who want to shop or eat or walk or visit parks, how do you enable them to park as well? I think there's a fear that the parking solution is a DIA style parking garage, which isn't necessary. There are multiple places throughout the town where we could inject 30 parking spaces. Maybe you have very small cast concrete parking structures, but it doesn't have to be a monolith, and it can be done in the context of a broader town plan. So I think this is a need that's going to grow into the future, but I think it's solvable in a way that won't have gross aesthetic impacts.
Basalt's parking problem now is nothing like what it would be if we have rampant growth and unabated development. In order to achieve the vitality we want, we need more people. And what we don't want is to lose visitors because they feel there's no parking downtown. First, we need to give people more options besides driving. Better bike trails, more bike racks, We Cycle, which, because of funding from this council, is coming this summer, improved and better connected walking paths, public transportation, and maybe someday a connector bus in Basalt. And finally, more parking. A parking garage on Lyons Park and or Clark's Market will be necessary for guests, residents, and employees who currently park in downtown spots. While I believe in development paying its own way, some type of specific public-private partnership may be necessary to achieve all we want from future development. I believe we must explore the possibility of selling Merino Park or some part of Lyons Park to help finance some of these improvements.
Yes, Basalt has a parking problem. This problem is going to exacerbate quite a bit if and when the Basalt Center Circle property develops and becomes more dense. That is an opportunity to work with a developer for parking in the downtown area. Our staff has already done a great job of evaluating what the costs of surface parking, structured parking, and underground parking, how they relate, how much of a role we can play with that in the downtown area determines on our revenues and what we work with a developer. This constantly villainizing developers does not solve any of these problems, including parking. The plan for the Basalt River Park that is my favorite, again, I won't yell at my neighbors if I don't get my way, is if the entrance on Two Rivers Road goes into Basalt over the spur. And so you have a contiguous Lyons Park and Basalt River Park, which allows you to use old Two Rivers Road, for some parking to service the new arts on Lyons and the park on the river side. We unfortunately lost a chance for underground parking at Willits for the park and ride commuters there in an ordinance where they gave us a bunch of stuff that unfortunately we lost. We do have the ability to require them to do the more parking with their commercial expansion, and they are also required to pay for it down there. We do have a plan. The staff is working. This is going to crack you up on a urban renewal designation, which allows us to get federal funds for things like parking structures. So we may be able to be a significant player in mitigating those impacts that a development downtown will create.
Well, to me, small town character is what the people perceive as their community. My wife has a cousin that works in the chamber office in Fort Collins, and on their wall they have maintained small town character. I think Fort Collins has a larger population by far than Basalt. And so I think it's a state of mind. It's a feeling that the community fosters through their actions, the supports of the schools, the supports of public events, the support of just generally the community. I think Basalt needs to strive to have opportunities for all ages to live here, and that, to me, is what small town character is all about.
Yeah. Small town character can be a buzzword in the modern debate for doing nothing and keeping everything as it is. And the status quo is a powerful thing. People like the way things are. My son says, "Don't do anything to our house. I like it the way it is." So what we have to say is, Basalt is a wonderful town, and it's not perfect as it is. And there have been hundreds of years of test cases of what successful communities look like. They tend to have high density in the town core so that you don't sprawl. That also addresses a traffic problem. They tend to be oriented around mass transit, which we already are beautifully. They tend to have town cores where people can gather and hang out. And they tend to mix commercial, residential uses, retail, restaurants, in creative ways that create vibrancy. So a great example of that is if you have an expensive house and you zone it so that there's an accessory dwelling unit where someone who's not that wealthy can live, you have both affordable housing and a diversity in the town, so it's not just rich people or just poor people. So that's the vision, and in doing that, you create a better place, not a less good place.
In order to have small town character, you have to be a small town. Eagle, Eagle Vale, and even Glenwood Springs used to be small towns. We need to put the brakes on urban sprawl, encourage smart and selective growth. New development is going to happen whether we want it or not. Working with other governments, like Eagle County, and with private developers, like we've done with Low Enterprises, to limit the size of new projects and ensure they fit within the scope of Basalt is the only way we can preserve the charm we moved here for. Allowing limited development density downtown and negotiating with and influencing future growth, not within the town's borders, are two things we can continue to do to maintain our character.
Well, the first thing I think when you address that is you have to look at Basalt and realize what you're talking about. We had the election year rhetoric. We have to maintain a small town character. In a discussion we were having on Willits. Willits is not small town character. The idea of Willits, from when it was planned from the start, if you talk to Lipkin and these guys, was that it was supposed to be like Brooklyn. And if you talk to the people who live there, they say they like being able to walk everywhere and to have it dense, and it's a great place to live, and it's doing well. That's not what we're talking about in small town character. Downtown, Old Town Basalt has all the small town character that everybody in the country would like to have. Everybody, especially in the West, wants something like our downtown. Again, what we choose to approve in the downtown area, I mean, we have a standard, we have an architectural style, we have a size style. What we encourage developers to come to help not just maintain that, but create more of it, is in our hands. We have the control over that. A lot of that, of course, we're talking about the Basalt Center Circle property. And that's the kind of a thing that is an overlay, definitely a plan on anything that comes in. We need jobs. Income, again, it's either sales tax or it's property tax. If it's property tax, it's moving us away from that goal we talked about. Housing options are, we've got 5 different affordable housing projects on the drawing board. We should have had a shovel in the ground on a couple of them already. We've had a couple of disappointments, but we lost a lot of housing that was offered by the developer at Willits that was slated for the school district. That was a loss. We shouldn't have let that slip through our fingers. But we have 5 other projects that, if I have my way, we will get the shovel in the ground on at least some of them this summer. So that is an essential part. More people living there, more people spending money there, more sales tax. That helps us with that balance of growth.
Well, this is a difficult question. It's a big question. And some, not necessarily easy solutions, but some restrictions that we can talk about would be making sure that our growth is maintained within our UGB, which is our urban growth boundary, and preventing sprawl. Talking to Eagle County and asking for their support in preventing sprawl, because Pickens County right now seems to really honor the IGA, which is an intergovernmental agreement, in which applications that come in asking for referral from Pickens County, they basically respond with, you need to go to the town, we would never approve this. You need to talk to the municipality, and they flip it back to the municipality. Eagle County hasn't necessarily done that in the recent past. We have 3 great commissioners right now that are really reaching out to Basalt and are interested in working on neighborhood caucuses. And I'm working with a small group trying to get that moving forward so that we're discussing development applications before they're put into the formal process in which communication, at least from the citizens' perspective, is shut down. And so through the caucus, as Pickens County has set up, neighborhoods can come together and have informal conversations with both the developer and those making decisions in our formal political process and discuss concerns before the applications move beyond. And we also need to be careful that we honor our small town character and values. Otherwise, we become Anywhere USA with box stores and pavement everywhere. And again, I go back to, that's not why we live here. We've moved here because we want to live a different life, and we have different values.
Yes, I have a broad philosophy, and it's that as towns develop, sprawling down the valley like Phoenix or Vail or Tucson or Denver is not a great idea. That has environmental impacts. It has traffic impacts. The best strategy for communities is to build density in the town core, compact mixed-use development that builds up appropriately. So that which is generally called smart growth or new urbanism is an approach that is going to drive my philosophy. I'm also very driven by the idea of sustainability, which means we should put our development in a place where it can access resources and not impact other areas. So broadly, that's going to be my approach.
I lived at Aspen and Snowmass for 18 years before I moved to Basalt in 2005. I've seen what too much government regulation can do in the building department and at the ballot. I've also seen how ignoring a problem like traffic can escalate to a serious lifestyle impairment. I've been a ski instructor for 27 years. The key to what we do is to set people up for success. You don't push them too fast, and you don't hold back their progress. As a general contractor, I surround myself with good people and let them do their jobs. I listen to what they have to say and make decisions based on their input and my own experience. All of these things certainly influence how I vote on council. I've changed votes based on the tone of the community, like on the Willits TIF, and I'm not afraid to lose a vote if I don't feel the community is being well served, like when the CCRC gave no beds to local elderly citizens, or when the recent Pan and Fork resolution omitted building limits.
Yes, yes, and yes. Absolutely. As most of you know, or some of you know, I was a town councilman for Snowmass Village. I was a Pitkin County Commissioner. And then there were 20 years between, which surprised me when I realized it, between leaving office at the county and running for office and doing these last 4 years here in Basalt. That gives you experience. I mean, I've done all these things we're doing. It was just getting used to a new land use code. There wasn't anything new when I came to the council at Basalt. So I have the experience of having done these things and seen what works. Then the 20 years gives you a really terrific perspective. I mean, you know what, God, I wish I could have gotten that done. Or you know, boy, it's a darn good thing we didn't push that through because it would have been a mess by now. And so it gives you that larger picture of where you're going, how you approach the goal. My philosophy we've talked about. All of these things, affordable housing, vitality downtown, early child care, traffic, all are an integral part of that goal. A wonderful place to live where working people can afford to live. We don't want that real estate pressure from Up Valley to come down to where we end up with a wealthy retired community. I don't think anybody wants that. A wealthy retired community here. So that's the philosophy. Every vote, everything that comes before you has to be held up. Is it moving you towards that goal or is it moving you away? Oh, sure, you know, let's just buy all this property for all this money and we'll just raise taxes for it. Not moving towards it. Gee, we should have a developer do a good development, but also require of him to do things for the town so that the town doesn't have to pay for him. Heck, that didn't cost us sales tax or property tax. These things, the experience of having done these things and having a clear idea about the goal for Basalt definitely influences everything I vote for on the council.
In terms of background, I am certainly a fiscal conservative. It's in my blood. I'm a former banker, and I currently manage, or I'm a finance director of a respected and successful local nonprofit. I will never place Basalt, the town, or its taxpayers in a fiscally compromised situation. I'd like you to consider that several years ago, I spearheaded a community effort to defeat the economic behemoth, which we all know as the Mid-Valley Rec Center. The vote failed by 80% because people were really concerned about the economic impact that was going to last for eternity to have this really, really large and expensive rec center. People also came out and voted against it because they love their open space. From a philosophical standpoint, I know that Basalt is an incredible place. It is a unique place, and we need to protect it from overdevelopment and overpopulation. We need to protect it from outsiders that come in and view it solely as money in their pocket. And we're going to experience more and more development pressures in the years ahead. We need leaders that act for the greater good of the community and without conflicts of interest.
My background is that I've been a resident of this community for 53 years. I've graduated from Basalt High School. My daughter graduated from Basalt High School. My son graduated from Basalt High School. And my mother graduated from Basalt High School. I think that the history that I have and the knowledge of what this community has been and is will allow me to make decisions to ensure that the community be successful in the future. My decisions will be based on study, listen, and decide. I'm running as an individual. The reason I'm running is that I love this community and I want to see this community be successful and also be a good place for my grandson to grow up.
The future for Basalt looks promising and exciting, with more jobs, better schools, and finally a downtown park that embraces the river for all citizens. We're on the cusp of a fantastic time for Basalt, and I'm running for re-election to make sure it happens. More specifically, I envision new businesses opening Basalt, providing good jobs and getting cars off Highway 82, which is good for other drivers, great for those who get to work in town, and good for the environment. Maybe we can find a fly rod manufacturer to open a shop here in Basalt and make the perfect 3-weight fly rod. Basalt can be the hub of environmental activities and home to a riverfront park that attracts people from our town and from out of town. And we have to make these changes while maintaining stringent financial oversight despite pressure and temptation to overspend. 4 years ago, there was no relationship between the school district and the town despite a previously executed IGA. Now, we collaborate on facilities, housing, and recreation. Improving this relationship was a promise I made 4 years ago, and I'm proud to call the greatest success of my first term. Thank you for listening.
If Basalt is a Starship Basalt, it needs a Spock. I mean, you need someone trying to bring order out of chaos, all this discussion and all this emotion. You need some logic applied to all these things. Here's this vote that would have given, well, it was one of my pet projects, I have to admit, office space for veterans support groups here in the Valley. You know, we lost it in a vote. You know, a vote against that, if you say you want these things, is not logical. That is what you have to vote for. What I'd like to see in the next 4 years is more things like RMI, that we attract more things like that, that we have this arts thing. We just actually voted through an annual a donation to the arts groups based on any capital project the town has. So, you know, they should be locked in for being able to create these attractions. But that's, I mean, RMI, a river conservancy, art base expanding, and a performing arts center application, bringing more of those kinds of things to Basalt by helping those kinds of things. Actually, our financial advisor, you probably know this, saved RMI on their interest on their construction loan $1 million with no burden on the borrowing power of the town. I mean, these are the things we can help out those projects. In turn, you have to ask RMI, what do you need in order to do the things, bring the prestige, bring the financial vitality with these great conference groups and all that to Basalt? And they say, we need an upscale, even if very small, hotel. These are the ways we can attract those kinds of groups. Look what we did for RMI. Look what we did for River Conservancy. Don't you want to be in Basalt? And if we can create more of that kind of an atmosphere, not just outdoor recreation. There's outdoor recreation all over Colorado. There's some beautiful places, but they don't have the history of arts and intellectual pursuits that this valley has. And if we can bring that kind of a reputation to attract that kind of things to Basalt, I'll be happy at the end of my next term.
I served on Basalt Town Council several years ago. I must say that it was not easy. Until you're a councilor or serve on a commission or in some other government capacity, you really have no idea of the complications of every single issue before you or the unintended consequences of your decision. I must say that I thought I'd never run for council again, but the response of the council over recent issues, such as the Pan and Fork and the Willett subsidy, caused me to think again. The community wants a voice in the big stuff, like the Pan and Fork. The community does not want every inch paved and subsidized developers. If I'm elected, I want to bring the caucus idea to fruition, As I mentioned earlier, I'm currently involved with a group that's working with Eagle County to get the caucus idea pushed through, and it seems like Eagle County is very interested in this idea. I feel that we also need to revisit the master plan and make sure that we have a vast swath of our community involved in that. And in that process, I would also like to engage people who are my age and younger. It's very challenging because a lot of government, it's just the nature of it is set up to be very difficult for busy young parents and working people to be engaged. So I'd like to find a way to get the younger people and their voices involved in our government and in the future of our town. And finally, I'm so excited to achieve an enviable river park that is the pride of our town and our valley. Thank you very much.
My big reason for running again was the fact that the budget seems to be a bit out of control. I think we need to concentrate on balancing our spending with our income, and also we need to have a healthy reserve. When I left office 4 years ago, we had $3 million in reserves. Right now we have 300 and some odd thousands, just barely enough to cover the taper regulations. I think it's important that we maintain the infrastructure, our streets, our trails, our paths. The council needs to continue ensuring that the community is safe. The council needs to, as a councilor, I will support the staff. We have an excellent staff. There are 7 less employees now than there was in 2007, and they're doing twice the amount of work. So I think that it's important that an elected official gives credit to the staff and supports them. My family has been supporting youth of all ages for many, many years. We attend every school event we can. We attend every athletic event we can. And we've really worked hard to make our schools the best there are. I think it's important also to concentrate on uniting this community again. This is Basalt, and it should be one Basalt. I think that the community is the community and the town is beginning to become self-sustaining without having to rely on outside forces. I think my vision for Basalt in 5 years, I hope my vision for Basalt in 5 years is that we are one community and that we have some really nice facilities in the Pan Fork Trailer Court site. 371 people's lives were changed because of the redevelopment of that park, and I think the town owes it to them to do something there.
In 5 years, I think Basalt has the opportunity to be possibly the coolest town in the West, if not the world. I think we can have a vibrant town commons where you show up with your family and 3 hours later you're still there. Why? Because you met friends, you went to a restaurant, you played in the park, you bought something you needed, you checked in at your office, which was downtown, you kayaked in the river park. I think we can have addressed the walkability of the community and the connectivity to both Willits and South Side through an underpass. I think we can have freed up, in some cases, the river and ensured that new development enables access to the river. And I think we can ensure that the community has access to what by then will be an even better mass transit system. I think we can do it in a way that maintains the economic viability of the town and the fiscal viability of the community. And I think it's gonna happen, and it's gonna happen soon, maybe in the next 3 years.